You think you just fell out of a coconut tree? You exist in the context of all in which you live and what came before you.
So, speaking of what came before us, hi everyone, it's Justin from Point of View. What a weekend of news we've had in the United States. What a crazy couple of weeks. What a crazy couple of weeks we've had in the United States just in general. Ironically, with everything that's happening in terms of the political news I'm referring to, Nick and I decided, hey, it's about time to talk about politics, the 2024 election. Let's do that. And so then we recorded an episode on Saturday, July 20th, 2024. And what happened after we recorded? Well, on Sunday, Joe Biden decided that he was no longer going to seek the nomination for re-election for president of the United States. So stick with us here. It's going to be, we're going to try and make this transition as smooth as possible. Our apologies in advance if it's a little turbulent, but again, we're going to try and make it as smooth as possible. Here's what's going to happen. So Nick and I have some thoughts about the Joe Biden dropping out. We are currently, full transparency, recording on Sunday, July 21st, 2024 at 11 p.m. To just discuss the news of the day today, Joe Biden dropping out and potential candidates that might replace him. And then we will continue with the episode that we record on Saturday. We're going to release that in two parts. The first part is more so related to the news of Joe Biden dropping out. We talked about the debate and kind of the fallout after the debate and the push from within the Democratic Party for Joe Biden to drop out of the race. We talk about it in hypotheticals because it was not a real thing at that point. And then later on this week, we'll release the second half of the episode where we're talking more about the Republican National Convention, the assassination attempt against Donald Trump, J.D. Vance, and just the overall 2024 political, the 2024 election, but the political kind of happenings that are going on right now. So stick with us. We appreciate you being here, and let's do this. Okay. Hi, Nick.
Hello. Again,
yes. It's funny. Our previous cold open that we had initially planned, we said how we hadn't talked to each other in 2-3 weeks and how we've talked to each other so much over the last 48 hours, 24 hours, which is a blessing. But I think we were both surprised. We did not know this was coming. We thought there was a possibility that he might, that Joe Biden might drop out of the race, and we might be talking about this.
I wouldn't say we were surprised because as listeners are going to hear how we end the episode, we said what we thought was going to happen.
We did.
And that's still coming.
But it was one of those moments that when it still comes, you're still shocked.
Oh, of course. Yeah.
Like I think there's a constant joke happening that's like, can't we just live in some precedented times? Like, right. You know, there's just ever since like COVID or even, I don't know, you could go back as far as whatever, and the word unprecedented has been like the word of the decade. So I mean, there is no historical precedent of a president after their first term not wanting to seek their reelection, I think, since the 1800s, the late 1800s, potentially Rutherford B. Hayes. So this is kind of crazy. Not crazy, it's just news. And yeah, so here we are. We're talking about it. And so funny that we created a time-sensitive episode yesterday.
Of course. Basically, what listeners are about to hear can be separated into two discussions. BC before Coconut, AD after Dropout.
Yes, and as you heard from our little cold opening there, that is just a funny meme of Kamala Harris that Nick and I keep sending to each other. It's going to be one of our things now. So anyway, let's get into this, because we know we have a really great conversation that we want people to get to afterwards, after this part. Hopefully you'll stick around for that part, even though it's a little bit dated, but we still think it was a good conversation worth releasing with
still
this
relevant.
episode.
Yeah.
Absolutely, still relevant. We can see if we were foolish or not in our conversations and talking hypotheticals. But I want to know, okay, so the news came around 1:49 today, to be exact.
Come around.
What were your initial thoughts when you heard Joe Biden was getting out of the race?
Honestly, I wasn't surprised. The speculation that he was going to drop out was getting national coverage. So I wasn't shocked. Some people were calling it, calling the information leaked to the press. Some people were saying it was a rumor, but I was not surprised. I had a strong feeling that he was going to. As you'll hear, I said in the episode, in the part of the episode that we recorded on Saturday, I'm glad that it happened, because I do stand by what I said. If Joe was going to stay in the race, we needed to rally behind him. We meaning his party. And I know you are an independent left-leaning, but the Democratic Party needed to rally behind him if he was, in fact, going to be the nominee. That said, and I said this in the episode too, I wanted, if he was going to drop out, we need to quickly find somebody to replace him. And that's going to be my sentiment throughout this part of the episode as well.
Mm-hmm.
None of my opinions on the matter have really changed. I'm just glad he dropped out now and didn't wait any longer.
Yeah, I heard it. First off, I want to just jokingly point out that you were the one that broke the news to me, and it's very funny, because usually when it comes to this type of stuff, I'm breaking the news to you, and you're breaking oh, did you hear this happen on Big Brother? So it was just funny today how when we played phone tag, you were like, oh, he dropped out. Oh, and he endorsed Kamala Harris. And I was like, we have to stop talking like this. It just was very, it was very funny.
Unprecedented conversations.
Conversations continued between our relationship.
Well, you just mentioned that Joe endorsed Kamala Harris.
Yes, we're going to get to
that.
So
we should talk about that.
Yes.
Because that was the first time you've said it on this episode.
Yes, we will get to that. I just want to share my thoughts quickly. As I just said, Nick broke the news to me. I immediately turned on the TV and just followed coverage, was glued to it the rest of the day. I heard it put really well by an NPR host, where she said, I think it was Maura Eliason, said that Democrats, how they're feeling right now, are a wave of relief with a blanket of anxiety. And that's because it's a wave of relief because there was been mounting pressure, as you alluded to, for Joe Biden to step down after the debate. And we discussed that later on here. But we both thought he was going to drop out. I thought he had to drop out. The numbers, the polls, just it wasn't looking great for him. He didn't have a very high ceiling, and I felt like another Democrat or another candidate would have had a higher ceiling for him to reach in terms of being able to get more voters. And so I felt that. I am glad that he stepped down. I thought it was a selfless act. I really do.
Agreed.
I felt like it was a patriotic act. I know that might sound political.
No,
and
I
I know
agree.
the Speaker of the House has already said that he might formulate a legal argument against what happened because it might not be, it's anti-democratic. I have certain thoughts about that. I don't think that has any grounding, but I did think it was a selfless act. I mean, the convention didn't happen. The Democrats did not solidify their nominee. He was the presumptive nominee because of the primaries, but it's just, it opens up the floor for another nominee, and it gives energy.
Yes.
It's in the first 5 hours since announcing it, Act Blue, which is a Democratic organization that raises money for presidential races, congressional races. Do you know how much money they raised in 5 hours?
This has been, I just read that this, I don't know, but I just read that today the Democratic Party raised more money than they have in God only knows
In
how
the
long.
first 5 hours, they raised $26.5 million in small donations. So that's like you
Right.
and I, not corporations,
Right,
not
right.
unions, not billionaires. So that is it's energy. So that was my initial reaction was this is I know this is high stakes, but I was like excited. I was like, oh my gosh, okay. Ironically, Nikki Haley said when she was running in her primary, the first party that drops their 80-year-old candidate will win this election.
Yeah.
And that's kind of funny that okay, now we've but anyway, I want to focus on the topic at hand. I knew this was a big decision, and I'm excited about what this might mean moving forward. So yeah, those are my thoughts.
I'm just glad it happened because calling for it to happen if it wasn't going to happen was extremely risky, as I've mentioned.
Yes. And actually, thank you for bringing that up. One more thing I want to say is I think it was done in a very professional but also classy way. Keep in mind,
Agreed.
President Biden is currently isolating still with mild COVID symptoms at his house in Rehoboth Beach. He is not with anybody. He's been watching the news, up on the news. He had some meetings with staff members and all that stuff, and I'm sure, and family and friends and all of that. But he wrote a letter, and I felt like that was really classy. He didn't say like on a tweet or just call a press conference for anything. He wrote a letter, and I thought it was short, it was sweet, it was to the point, and it was it felt classy.
I agree, but I also think that's like the precedent. I mean, maybe not set by the last president, but
I just felt like in
most
all
of
the
these
ways that it can be
things-
done. Like it can be done in an interview too. Like
yeah,
writing a letter was
yeah, but I feel like that is the way to go, and I could see other presidents doing the same, other past presidents. Not to diminish, but I do think that was,
yeah. So
a
I just
safe
wanted
way to
point that out.
go, and it was classy.
Okay, so then segueing into what you had kind of alluded to, the initial announcement was made through a letter that he posted to everywhere and the news and social media and all that stuff. And then a half hour later, he tweeted and with his endorsement with Kamala Harris.
Yes.
So he dropped out of the race, and he endorsed his vice president Kamala Harris, and then.
Yes.
Which is funny because at that point she had not even announced that she was running for presidency, and then a few minutes
But
later
he
she
tweeted a link. He tweeted a link to it, so it must have been a live link.
But so there was still some time, like 10, 15 minutes in between when he endorsed her and when before she accepted.
So she
that
hadn't announced
she hadn't
it
announced
yet.
it yet. So
Accepted
know.
her.
not
What,
accepted,
accepted
but like,
her nomination to run.
well,
to
accepted the
run for the
endorsement.
nomination.
accepted
Yeah,
the
I was gonna
endorsement
say.
or even said she was
Okay.
running. So that I thought that was kind of funny. But so Kamala Harris is the only name right now that has thrown their hat into the ring. She has filed with the FEC. So I don't know the finances situation, but my understanding is that she has access to the money that the Biden-Harris campaign raised beforehand. But I want to hear your thoughts. What do you think about Kamala Harris as a presidential candidate?
What are my opinions, or what do I think she's going to be like as a presidential candidate?
I think what do you how does this change things?
I don't know if I said this before or not, but the biggest grand statement made by the general public is they're both extremely old, right? That's like
Referring
been
to
the
Biden
biggest-
and Trump.
Yes, biggest blanket statement that I've heard, or most reoccurring. One lies, one is gently alive, was actually one of the headlines that I saw. That can't be said anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And I mentioned in the
The
episode
age
already
factor
that
is gone
right on
for the
the
Democrats.
right, yes, on the Democratic side. Yeah, that was a huge argument against Biden, and we just completely wiped that away. And now Donald Trump is the oldest presidential candidate nominee in history. So I think now it changes the landscape entirely, where we have a old liar and a very competent woman running for office.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, she hasn't received the official nomination yet, but she has a lot of heavy hitters behind her right now. And just to name a few, the Obamas have released a joint statement endorsing Kamala. Joe Biden, obviously, we said this, endorsed Kamala. She already has the notoriety of being the vice president. Pete Buttigieg, I don't know if you saw that, but he just released a statement endorsing her, as did Hillary this afternoon, Hillary Clinton.
Mm-hmm.
And the Clintons, actually. Bill also endorsed her. So those are some big names.
And I'll also add to that list Gavin Newsom, Gretchen Whitmer, Josh Shapiro. I think the governor of Pennsylvania is who I'm referring to. Also big names have endorsed her as well.
Yeah, so I think it changes the landscape a lot. I think the biggest mark against him, against Biden, was that he appeared to be declining in health or cognitive ability, and now we have a really strong candidate, in my opinion. And I've said this before, too. This is something that I'm going to also repeat, but a lot of women in America are really angry right now, and a lot of allies to women are really angry right now about the overturning of Roe v. Wade. Now to have a woman, hopefully, on the ballot, because we talked about the last time we had this conversation, it was, she's the second name. She's the vice president. I really think today was a huge pivot. It was a pivotal moment in how this election is going to pan out. I honestly believe that today might be the reason that we win. If, that's a big statement to make, but I really, really, really think that Democrats just won this election. I really, really do. I know that might sound way too optimistic, or like horrible news to somebody if you're not, voting that way. But
I continue to be skeptical.
And you have every right to be. But also think about, and not the debates determine elections. I think a lot of people I'm certainly going in decided already. I think she's going to wipe the floor with him. I don't know if you remember her performance against Penn in the debate.
He pulled out of the debate, though. There's not a debate now scheduled.
Do we know that there won't be one, though?
No, but he pulled out of the one that was initially scheduled because he said that the agreement was between him and Biden. So there's currently no debate scheduled. But I think
that speaks right there. I just want to say.
Well, it does, because the response was they pulled out of the ABC News one, and he said the debate should be on Fox News. So now he wants a home team advantage, because I think very briefly the Trump campaign is threatened by, they really wanted to face off against Biden because they saw him as a weak candidate. And now it certainly changes things. However, my whole view is that I'm still skeptical because we don't know. I think she has a higher ceiling, and I think that she has a better chance than Biden would have ever had.
Yes.
And we don't even know if she's the candidate yet. But I do think that it gives Democrats a higher chance of winning not having Biden as the candidate. For sure.
Right.
For sure. What are your, I guess, going back to my, the spirit of my initial question, do you have any thoughts on her individually? I'll say, admittedly, I need to read up more about her again. I do know that she was the district attorney of San Francisco and then became the attorney general of the state of California and then was a senator for the state of California and then became vice president, which is a tremendous career trajectory. But do you have any thoughts on her as an individual yet, or are you still kind of reading up on more details like I am?
Yeah, now I need to, because I admittedly don't follow the primaries, religiously, and that was the last time she was running
in 2020, the Democratic primaries. And she dropped out before the Iowa caucuses, which is before any votes were cast.
And I also I know some people haven't find issue with the fact that she was a prosecutor. I don't know. I really don't know what she's going to be. My guess, if I just had to throw a dart at a wall and see if it sticks, is that she's going to be similar to Biden, at least in her, say she gets the nomination, right? I think she'll probably, I don't think she's going to rock the boat a crazy amount with her campaign, at least. I would hope that she's a little bit more progressive. At least if I'm saying when she gets into office, like she's already there. There's a long way to go, but no, I'm happy. I like the fact that, honestly, I like the fact that she's 60 and not 81,
Mm-hmm.
and when she's
Her
59.
age is her
but-
biggest thing right now on the surface level.
and I'm jumping way ahead, and this might be way too progressive for America right now. But I think a Harris Buttigieg ticket would
There's no way
Be-
that's going to
not even
happen.
not even a ticket in office. I just think they would like run the country like a well-oiled machine. But
I love Buttigieg. I would love if he was president one day. I don't think, and we can talk about VPs momentarily, but I don't think he will be. He's a contender for VP right now, but I do love. I think he speaks very well. I talked about it before. Okay, so I definitely need to do more research on her. I don't have any initial concerns with her, if I'm being honest. I think there are definitely challenges that any candidate will have, but I think mostly right now what I'm feeling from the reaction to today, initial reaction, is I'm energized, I'm excited, because it's like, who knows what could happen, and that's exciting for me. Let's talk about vice president's potential options if she is the nominee, just because you brought it up. You think Pete Buttigieg might be an option for her? Or that was just kind of a hypothetical, throwing it out there?
that was more like that would be lovely to see them in office together. Like, I think they do a good job together. Whether that's the smartest option, I don't know, because like I just said, that's really taking our chances when we might need to be safe. And I say that as a gay man, because he's now, if she's going to be I'm talking,
that would be
like,
a very
let's say she gets
progressive
the
ticket.
nomination. Right. I'm saying, let's say she gets the nomination, so she's locked in.
Yep. We're talking
then
if
adding
she
a
gets
gay
the
man.
nomination, who's the vice president?
Right. I don't know, but I'm not saying like let's push for her to pick him. I'm not saying that. I'm saying let's push for her to pick whoever is going to give her the best option. But I don't really know, nor this is going to sound a little bit brash, but I don't really know nor care, as long as we make the right. I'm kind of like, I kind of step back. I don't know enough.
Yeah.
So I say,
Here,
I would just hope, I just trust that they'll make the right decision.
here are my thoughts, and this is brash in another way. I think she has to choose a white man as the vice president, because
And if
I
she
don't
does,
think-
then do it.
I think what she brings to the table, I think, is too much for some voters, right? She's a woman, she's a black
Unfortunately.
woman, she's an Asian American woman, and I think not all Americans or voters or what have you see those as strengths, or see those as benefits. So
know.
I think you have, in order to have a realistic, balanced ticket, and who knows, like I want to eat these words. I think she has to choose a
Right.
white man, a straight white man. And
Yeah, I was
so
gonna say Pete Buttigieg.
Pete Buttigieg is a white man. That's right. And so I think she's going to choose either. She's got some options. I don't think she's definitely not choosing Gavin Newsom. I think he's too controversial in that he comes from California. She comes from California. So actually, I think that's also a reason why she can't choose Gavin Newsom, is because you can't have a vice president who comes from the same state as you, which is interesting.
You learn something new every day.
Yeah, but also that with inflation, just California is very expensive, just in general. And I think one of his biggest criticisms that he gets and vulnerabilities is that California is very expensive. And so with inflation and the economy being one of the most, we'll say, even though by all metrics, the economy is doing well, inflation has gone up. And whether that's the Democrats' fault or not, I would say not necessarily as much blame as they're getting placed on them. I think that's a vulnerability, and I think having Gavin Newsom be on there and California is so expensive could be a vulnerability. I think same thing that I said, which you'll hear about. I think Trump's pick with J.D. Vance. They need somebody in a swing state, in a state that is going to decide the election. And some of those swing states are Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin, Arizona. Arizona's pretty red right now, but it can swing. It has swung. I think it went blue. It did go blue in 2020. It's going very red right now. But the two people that come to mind are Josh Shapiro, who's the governor of Pennsylvania and who has already endorsed Kamala Harris, and Senator Mark Kelly of Arizona, who's a very well-liked Democratic senator in Arizona. I think those are two straight white men who fit that bill, and they're very well liked in swing states. And I think
you're saying
it's going to be strategic. Go ahead.
Yeah.
I'm saying.
Sorry, I didn't mean to
No,
interrupt
go for it.
With one of the most intelligent things you're going to hear this episode. So you're saying it's not going to be America's oldest twink, Pete Buttigieg.
No. And if he's the oldest, I don't know.
Twink is like...
Is in the definition, is that you're young?
Yeah, it's like younger looking, but he's just like, he fits the bill.
Okay. I don't think it's going to be Pete Buttigieg. I would love for it to be, but unfortunately, I don't think it's going to be. And again, we have so much to speculate. And again, all this is speculation.
Yeah, watch it be. But he's not going to be the VP. He's going to be he's going to be the head of the ballot, or he's going to be the top name on the ballot.
He's going to be the nominee.
Yeah.
That would be tough, given that Kamala's the only name running, and he endorsed her.
It has to be Kamala.
Well, and he endorsed her, so it would be funny if he endorsed her and then ran against her.
Yeah, no,
just as a joke.
I'm making
a ha-ha. So, yeah. The last question that I have is, right now, a big uncertainty is we don't know how the Democrats are going to proceed with the process of choosing their nominee. Right now, Kamala is running. She's filed for the paperwork with the FEC. But again, unprecedented times, we don't really know how this process is going to go down. President Obama has pushed for an open process, but whatever that means, we don't really know. This has never happened before. So that could mean an open convention where people kind of give their kind of stance and why they want to be picked, and then the delegates pick. Right now, there's rumors that sometime between August 1st and August 7th, there might be a virtual roll call where the delegates solidify the nominee before the convention. I'm not in favor of that, really, because I think you need a lot of time to figure it out. I do think we need to figure out the nominee and really coalesce behind that person right away. But I feel like, I don't know, I'm not offering more solutions. I'm more offering criticisms of ideas. But let's just say there's an open process somehow, whether that be a primary or convention. You mentioned, I think
that would be shooting ourselves so deep in the foot.
Let's just play the game, though. The mind game. You've mentioned Pete Buttigieg. We obviously mentioned Kamala Harris. Are there any other names that you think would be good candidates now that Joe Biden has vacated the nomination, the presumptive nomination?
Honestly, no.
No.
I'm actually serious about that. I think we have all of these huge names getting behind Kamala, right? We don't need to be, and I'm not saying division, because there's discourses can be helpful and healthy, but we're just like quickly approaching the election. Like, we need to do this and do it quickly. And I think if somebody steps up and says, well, I challenge Kamala Harris to, for the nomination, all that's doing is taking away support from her.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, at the end of the day, whoever the nominee is going to be the nominee. But and then, whoever was challenging, hopefully their supporters would then go to Kamala, or I guess whoever gets the nomination if she doesn't. But I don't know. I think we just got to do this quickly.
Let me change the question. Do you support an open process?
Not really.
No.
Not that I don't support it. I'm not going to be... I mean, I just think it's... Right now, who else?
My stance is I do support an open process, and my reasoning is if she gets the nominee, and I don't have any other names in mind that I think would be better for the nominee at this point. When I say this point, I mean this late in the race. We're 107 days away from Election Day. That's not a lot of time. It is a lot of time, but it's not a lot of time. And I want an open process because I don't want there to be any doubt in the party. And I do believe the Democratic Party is a big tent party. There's a lot of different people with a lot of diversity of views. a word that I've heard thrown around today is a coronation, basically saying Biden drops out, he just names Kamala. There it is, no competition whatsoever. I think I don't want that. I don't want there to be any views that, okay, people had no choice. The delegates didn't really get to debate, didn't have other choices. To be honest, I feel like that's what happened in the primaries. I mean, of course, Marianne Williamson and Dean Phillips ran against Biden, but there really weren't other big names, realistic names that might go up against Biden. And so people voted for Biden and he got the nominee. So I think two things are true there. I think that we are running out of time, and I think it'd be better the earlier Democrats can coalesce behind one candidate and start running a general election campaign against Donald Trump, the better. But I also don't want there to be regrets or doubt or people to be like, did we go and do this process right? So I don't know what type of open process the DNC is going to come up with, but I think it is important to have an open process so that people can feel like, okay, we did this. People spoke their minds. If anyone wanted to come forward to and who knows, maybe no one else comes forward and says that they want to.
Right.
But I do think it's important for people to be like, let's talk in the town square together, transparently in front of everybody, and then we'll coalesce behind Kamala Harris.
That's what I'm saying. It's like it needs to happen so fast, and I think at this point an open process just creates more doubt. Honestly, I think we're both, because it gives other options, and it's like, oh well, is she the best candidate, or is? I know it sounds. I mean, I am pro Kamala right now. Given all of the reasons, I'm not going to go back and say and give all the reasons again that I've shared because it would just be repeating myself. But I think you and I are on the same. Like we're taking two different paths to the same end goal. Yeah, and I'm not saying the end goal being her. I'm just saying we need to rally behind someone. And you're just saying let's make sure that we agree on the
Let's
person.
make sure everyone feels comfortable.
Right.
And speak your grievances if you have grievances.
Right. I'm nervous to hear the grievances with 107 days to the election. And I know that can sound hasty, too.
I also don't know if this process would be, because we're past the primaries. So I don't know how open this open process would be public. It could just be private. Where, I've heard an idea of Kamala basically doing some town hall events with delegates and delegates ask her questions and then she answers them. And they're like, great. But it's basically to add another metaphor, I feel like it's the same reason why I think it's okay to question your faith.
Okay, yeah, no, that's fair.
I think it asks, it's like, why is it that I believe what I believe? Ask questions. And then oftentimes, I mean, sure, there's always the risk that you decide to no longer have faith, abandon faith, or change faith, whatever. Right. But it also has the possibility to confirm, okay, I'm more engaged with it. I do believe what I believe in, and I'm still with this. I think that's my thinking process behind it.
Yeah, and fair. And when it comes to faith, I am totally in that boat with you as well. I think we've had conversations about that off air. But, to...
Allow me to bring religion into politics.
Yeah, I was going to say, not to make light of this, but Jesus isn't coming down in 107 days, I don't think. So if you're Catholic, I don't think you have to... You know what I mean? Like, I feel like we got to make a decision here, whereas, But yes.
Same idea. Let's confirm my
belief. I see your point. I see your point. Yeah. I do see it.
So, anyway.
Yeah.
Thank you for listening to this. This was kind of our quick, that didn't obviously became not so quick, take on today's news. We hope you enjoyed this conversation. Now stay tuned for our conversation that we had on Saturday about everything that's happened in the last couple months, couple weeks, just the 2024 election and politics and the world, at least in American politics, before the news broke today. So thanks for sticking with us. Stay tuned.
You're back from Never Neverland.
I'm back from, did I say I was at Never Neverland?
No, I did, because
oh.
For those that don't know, Justin and I have not had a full conversation in a month. It's been less than that.
It's been 3 weeks almost though. Yeah. 2 or
played
3 weeks.
A
We talk-
serious game of phone tag.
We talk 4 or 5 times a week typically, so it's
Yes.
weird when we don't talk to each other.
Right. But do you want to talk about like what you've been up to? Why we've been on vacation for like a week on both ends? But
Sure. Finishing out my summer semester in my program. I'm officially a second year now.
that's
which is
crazy.
As of Thursday.
Congratulations.
Thank you. So it's just been really busy. I am back in New England again, which thank God, because it's been like 90s and like 100% humidity in Baltimore. It's been so hot, but I'm glad that we're chatting. We needed downtime. Apologies to our listeners, but we had to take care of ourselves. I had to take care of myself. And I appreciate my podcast team being flexible and rolling with the punches with that to both of you. So
Well,
I appreciate that. But
of course, and we have a bunch of episodes lined up, but we really wanted to space those out because we're still in the middle of our Myers-Briggs test too.
yes,
We didn't want to put
true.
those out all at once, so those are still coming. But we want to alternate between one of those episodes and then content that isn't Myers-Briggs for those that aren't necessarily interested. And we thought that this was a really important conversation that we're going to have today. So
Before we get into it, though, I wanted to share with you, and I've texted Dan a couple times, but I'm looking for a new phone right now.
okay,
Not because I feel like phones are at this point, and maybe you feel similarly, but I feel like phones, there used to be a lot of changes. Not a lot, but like you could see incremental changes between each year. I feel like at this point it's all AI, which honestly I'm not that big into at this
Me
point.
neither.
Like it's not a make or break if my phone has AI features or not.
right.
So I'm just looking at different phones. I'm also browsing iPhones, but one of the phones that I'm looking at right now, which I know you'll appreciate for this reason, is have you seen the new flip phones, like the ones that fold, like the Motorola Razr, for example?
The ones that fold, like that are touchscreen and fold in half, or
Yes.
those
Yes.
scare me because, like, how do you fold a screen?
Yeah. So there's ones that fold like a book, and then there's ones that fold down like an actual flip phone. So I'm looking at the ones that fold down like a flip phone. Motorola Razr, Samsung Flip has them. I think OnePlus is another company that makes them. But the Razr partners with Color of the Year, and every year they make a phone in the
do.
Pantone Color of the Year. Did you know this already?
Yes, I did. I
shouldn't
did.
have. I shouldn't be surprised.
Yes, I've noticed that they have their Motorola. Is it Motorola?
Yeah. Mhm.
They had. I mean, I've only followed this for 2 years, so I've only seen 2 colors. But yeah, they had a Viva Magenta one, and now they have a
I think
Peach
they've
Fuzz
only
one.
done it 2 years, so you're not behind.
Okay, cool.
But so their latest foldable phone, one of the color options is Peach Fuzz. So if I
You gonna
get
get
that phone, I mean, again, I'm there's nothing really motivating me to get a new phone other than I've had my phone for 3 years, and it's, I don't know, technology ages quick. So once it starts really giving me trouble, then maybe I'm looking, but I'm just kind of browsing right now. But I'm really considering the flip phone with the Pantone Color of the Year.
So
just for you, really, because I'm friends with you, and I think you'd be like, oh my gosh.
I would. I do have a.
And it's nice. It has a nice back too, because it's not metal. It's like it's called vegan leather. And
Interesting.
so it's like a soft
I don't know
back.
how I would
Anyway,
feel
sorry, you were
about that
gonna say.
because you can scratch it easily, but or like indent it easily. But I guess it's the same with the case. So would you?
And I usually put cases on
Yeah.
my phones too. so.
Would you get that color, the peach fuzz, or would you be getting this next year? And in that case, it would be a different color.
Well, I'm thinking if I do get a phone this year, it would be in the fall.
So it would still be
So
that
it would be
color
like-
then?
It would still be that color, but I don't know if I'm getting a phone this year again. I'm just kind of loosely browsing, but I was looking at, there's like the Razr, which is like the standard model, and then there's the Razr Plus, which is like, I don't know, they had, all these companies had Plus to
Right,
it and
of course.
charge an extra like
Max,
$300.
extra, plus.
Exactly, Max, Ultra,
Yep.
whatever. And so there, I think one of them has the peach fuzz, and one of them has like orange spritz, which is not obviously the Pantone Color of the
It's-
Year, but it's like I'm getting one of those colors.
And yeah, they're both
because,
kind
you
of
know,
in your
that's-
wheelhouse because you like the color orange.
Exactly. That's what I'm thinking. So I think it'd be cool. I mean, when I got this phone, I'm holding up my Pixel 6 right now. They had it in coral
Mhm.
red, but Verizon, which is strange because Verizon is red,
Yes.
didn't have like you couldn't get the coral.
That's not
So
coral.
I was gonna get a coral one, but
SpongeBob jokes. More SpongeBob humor.
So, SpongeBob turned what?
He
35.
turned 38. Well,
No.
the show turned 25, but the character turned 38 on the 14th
Wow.
of July. What a guy.
Wow. All right. I did not know he was
Oh,
that
he's
old.
old.
I should know the show turned 25 because it was born the same year I was born, and I'm turning 25 this year.
Woo!
So I'm as old as SpongeBob, the
I
show
love
at least.
that.
How are you?
I'm good. Yes. So I had COVID in the same week that I was supposed to go to Lana Del Rey. So that was $600 down the drain. That was really fun. I was also supposed to help you host Big Brother. That was also really fun, not getting to go to that.
So we moved to LA. My father gets a job at the Palm Restaurant. My Uncle Junior works there, who is a Jehovah's Witness.
Should we pivot?
Let's pivot hard.
Let's pivot. Okay, this episode. I've been wanting, y'all know me, I've been wanting to talk about, in this election year, politics for a while. So,
We're going to throw in some
Thank you for
religion.
indulging.
I'm kidding.
yeah.
Okay.
Thank you for indulging me. I'm excited to talk about this. There's a lot going on right now. Where do you want to start?
Let's take it back to the first debate. So far, it's the only debate.
Okay.
Biden versus Trump.
Yes. Let's provide some context. So this was June 27th. It was the earliest debate. I don't know history, but I think in history, or at least in the last century or so.
Yeah, why?
Biden's campaign called for it, which in hindsight, so freaking glad they did it that early. The commission or committee for presidential debates was not involved. That's like a third party organization that usually puts them on. But Biden called for it, and Biden's campaign called for it. The Trump campaign decided that they were also they were like, fine, let's do it. So they agreed to one on June 27th, which already happened, and one in September, I think, early September.
We'll be there.
That would be interesting. Yeah, this one was hosted by CNN. The other one is going to be hosted by ABC News, and it was interesting. Did you? I mean, I'm also interested in understanding how people watch these things, because I'm a freak and I watched them live, and no one watches them live anymore. Most people don't even have cable television anymore. So I'm curious, did you watch it as it happened live, or did you how did you know what happened?
I know what
so How
happened.
did you consume the debate?
I'm pretty sure I was working, so I didn't get to watch it.
Okay.
And I followed along. That's even a loose. I did not watch the debate because I saw some feedback from it and was just very disheartened and felt a little bit hopeless.
Okay. But did you follow along live, or did you saw like content?
I honestly don't remember, because if I was in fact
Okay.
waiting tables, I wouldn't have been able to be
wouldn't have seen
looking
it.
on my phone
Okay.
that much.
I think that's good though, because we had different
Right.
perspectives. You seeing it more curated content, and I saw it.
And I've
live,
seen
so
feedback. I'm
Sure.
chronically on Twitter, as you know.
that can't be good for your health.
No, it's not. But what one of my friends shared with me that I trust his assessment was that Joe looked really old and feeble, and Donald just lied through his teeth the whole time.
Mm-hmm.
That's
a good summary.
Yeah.
It's a good summary. And the frustrating part for me watching it live and just watching it in general was both candidates had, whether you're super plugged into politics or not, or you're just kind of passively watching, both candidates had certain expectations. Trump's expectations were, don't be aggressive, don't be, dictator-like, just be politician, talk about policy if you can, try not to say anything absurd. Biden's expectations were, stand there, don't look old, don't have a gaffe, and just don't show your age, right? And for both of those are really low expectations if you think about it. Two people who are running for the president of the United States, those
Right.
expectations are very, very low. Trump, for the most part, in my opinion, met those expectations. He had, his voice was somber. It was quieter. He didn't really have that many, like, you know, like, remember in 2020, the Proud Boys stand back, stand by moments. He didn't have that. He lied through his teeth. He, you know, all the different things that he says, you know, lie, lie, lie. And honestly, I was kind of annoyed that the CNN moderators, Dana Bash and Jake Tapper, didn't fact check in the moment. But honestly, it was also Biden's responsibility, I think, to fact check and to call him out on lies. But then switching to Biden, he could not finish sentences. He seemed like, I mean, his campaign in the middle of the debate said he had a cold. I don't know if I believe that. He looked like he was in cognitive decline. He could not finish sentences. He at one point said, "We beat Medicare." What? What is that? Like, what does that mean? It sparked now where I think we're 4 weeks, 5 weeks, maybe. We're almost a month since the debate. And then there's been all this conversation about should he even stay in the race and is he even fit to be president still? I think he's fit to finish out the term. We can get into this, but it was a poor performance. And he acknowledged that, which is fair, but it was awful. I watched literally like a horror movie through my fingers as I was watching it.
Well, and I understand people's concern that you want a leader who is fit to serve, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Fit to lead. It's unfortunate that he's debating someone who's getting away with lying in part because his opponent is old.
And didn't call him out on him.
Right. Well,
yeah.
Part
Also,
of me,
let's
part
point
of me
out too
doesn't
that
agree fully that it's Biden's responsibility to call him out on that. I mean, yes, that would be a strong strategy.
In a debate, yes.
Okay. I just think that, how do I want to say this? The fact that, you know, lies were overshadowed by somebody's mental state,
It's what was the bigger headline.
Right.
And it was and his performance and his appearance of cognitive decline and not being able to finish sentences or finish thoughts, and his very soft. I mean, they both spoke very softly. Also, what I was going to say, let me point out, Trump is 3 years younger than Biden. I just want to point that out. So when people say Biden's old, Trump is also old. There's a 3-year difference. People age differently, but just want to point that out too.
Right. And
yeah,
I also want to point out that Trump has also had gaffes.
Oh yeah.
Specifically, the one I'm thinking about is calling Nikki Haley Nancy Pelosi multiple times.
Yep. Right. They're both old men. Oh boy, that was crazy. So that was a couple weeks ago. Then what's happened? Then we're talking about. Then there's been conversation about will Biden get out of the race. That was about happening for 3 weeks or so. He's been adamant that he was not going to get out of the race. Some minor kind of players in the Democratic Party have been saying that, you know, pushing for him to get out. And then this week, there's been more kind of major players kind of telling him to get out. There's been more private conversations with Nancy Pelosi, Chuck Schumer, Hakeem Jeffries. Chuck Schumer is the Senate Majority Leader. Hakeem Jeffries is the House Minority Leader. Nancy Pelosi is the former Speaker of the House. Barack Obama has been another person whose name has been floated about kind of in Biden's inner circle of kind of, it's ultimately his choice too. Let me just point that out. Because of the primary, and let me argue that the Biden campaign and the White House are saying that the voters who voted in the primary chose Biden. Okay, we chose Biden, but also there wasn't really much of a choice. He was the only one running that was serious. It was Biden, it was Dean Phillips, it was Marianne Williams. Marianne Williams wasn't getting any votes. Dean Phillips got some, but he was some random congressman from Minnesota, I think. So people are like, oh, they made their decision, but there was nobody else running against him. I think that's a failure in the Democratic Party that we've had 4 years to come up with a strategy for 2024, and we've sat on our asses and done nothing to create another candidate in case Biden could not go for a second term. Again, that's all his choice, but I'm going on tangents. It's ultimately up to Biden.
Have that backup, you're saying?
Have that backup. Have someone ready. And if we get into talking about who could, if he steps down, and terminates his bid for re-election, then we can talk about that and who I think it will be. But because of the primary, he has all the delegates to get the nomination. And so for those of you who don't know how it works in our country, is we have a primary system where voters in every state can vote who they want the nominee to be for each party. There's some nuances about which party you're registered for, if you can even participate in a primary or whatnot. I'll use the state of Massachusetts because that's what I'm registered in. We have a semi-open primary, which means that you have to be registered for a party to participate in the primary. If you're a registered Republican, you participate in that one. Democrat, participate in that one. If you're registered as an independent, you get to choose which primary you participate in. So that's a unique one. So anyway, we vote, and then delegates are then from each state committed to that person, whoever wins the primary, and then a person is officially nominated as the party's nomination at their convention. So at the time of recording this, the Republican National Convention just happened, and Trump accepted the Republican nominee for president, along with J.D. Vance, and we'll talk about him later. And so the Democratic National Convention is not until August, I want to say. So Biden has enough of the delegates locked in that during the convention, they, in the way it's gone in the past, should say, we're going to nominate Biden. So it's up to him, because those delegates are locked in, it's only his decision to drop out or stay in. So people really can't do much, which is, again, I have so many issues with our system, but that's how it works. So he has to make that decision himself.
Right.
With all that being said, and there's a couple options, and then I want to ask you a question. He can drop out himself, and if that happens, he could endorse somebody, or he could say, let's have an open convention. Because historically what's happened is, before the primary system happened, parties picked their nominee at the convention. So there would literally be a bunch of delegates from all the states and be like, we want Joe Biden, we want Pete Buttigieg, we want Gretchen Whitmer, we want Gavin Newsom, we want Kamala Harris, whoever.
Right.
And then they would duke it out, not fight, but debate at the convention. And then they would come out of the convention with a nominee. That's the other option that could happen, is the Democrats could have an open convention. And I think that'd be good for television. And I think it'd re-energize the party. But I do think it would be a little bit chaotic. So I think that's the risk-benefit analysis that you have to do. But anyway, my question for you is, with all that being said, from all the conversations been having over the couple weeks, what do you think about what's going on in the Democratic Party? Do you think that Biden should stay in? Do you think he should drop out? What are your thoughts?
So I want to be very, very careful with my words here.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of talk, as you just said, about, from within the Democratic Party, he should drop out, he should not drop out.
Mm-hmm.
You said it's ultimately his decision. He has stated, I am not dropping out. That is his official
He said
statement.
multiple opportunities to say that I would step down, but he said no. Mm-hmm. Sent letters to Congress. Yep.
If he continues to run,
mm-hmm.
and this is the way I see it, it is a movement to defeat Donald Trump, who is a wannabe dictator. We need to get behind him. And I think the discussion of, drop out so close to the election is
harmful,
risky.
Yeah.
Very risky, because it's causing division within our own party. Mm-hmm. And again, I'm saying I'm referring to me, my party. It's causing division.
I don't mind. I'm a left-leaning independent. I don't mind saying that. Like,
okay, but I don't want to say we for you.
Sure.
If you're not including yourself in that. But I'm
sure. I don't mind saying that. Yeah.
Yeah. I think it's, the people that are publicly calling for him to step down, especially I see what it's doing, and part of me is like, this is good, because there's somebody that people really respect calling for him to step down, and maybe that'll get him to, because I think that would be a good thing, And again, I'm very careful to say that because I don't want to be one of those people that's like, he needs to step down. He needs to step down, because I feel like that's just adding to the division. And again, I'm only one person on a little podcast. So I'm a little bit more comfortable saying that than, say, if I were like a famous politician. I do think at the same time, it's so tricky. It's really, I can't necessarily put all the responsibility on the people calling him to step down and say, oh, that's irresponsible, because if he's not stepping down, we're causing division within our party, because part of it is his responsibility. A big part of it is his responsibility to make the right decision for his party.
As a leader in the Democratic Party.
Yes, of course.
I
And
think.
similar to when I've said, like, as a politician, what your job should be is to serve your people. You work for your people that elected
the
you.
constituents,
And not just that elected you. I say elected you, but I mean like the entire country. Your country, I'm generalizing, saying your country elected you.
But more specifically, your constituents. For sure.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, but really it's the entire.
Yes. If you're talking about president, absolutely. I
Yes.
think if you're talking about representatives, I think it's your responsibility to represent your constituents. I think
Yes.
there's so much
Okay.
diversity in
Okay.
Congress.
Yes.
So I think that's
Fair.
there's room for more debate, and there's how people are represented are different. If you're in the executive branch and you're president, you have to represent the entire country.
Right.
Yeah.
So what I'll say is this. If he is in fact in cognitive decline, which we don't know for fact, we can make our assumptions, we can, have our opinions.
We can infer. Yep.
Yes. If he is in fact in cognitive decline, it's his responsibility to step down. And I think that is the responsible and the action that is doing right by the people you serve.
Country before ego.
Of course.
Party before ego. And I also want to make this differentiation too. We say cognitive decline, and people sometimes think dementia. He could just be facing the normal
Of
aging
course.
process.
Of course.
Which,
And I don't
which
love
could be said as cognitive decline. Go ahead.
Right.
Sorry.
But I don't love when people are like, oh, he has dementia, he has Alzheimer's. Like, we don't know that. And that
Right.
we don't have the tools ourselves. I mean, some people have the tools to diagnose, but even still, if you're a doctor that can diagnose that, you can't diagnose it over TV. Like, you're not,
Right.
probably not
He's
even licensed to practice there.
He's
But-
an 81-year-old man.
right.
Or 82.
I think he's 81.
81.
If that were the case, that he is unfit to lead, I'm even like hesitant to say this just because, as I just said, like, we can't keep saying like if we don't know, but if that is the case, step down quickly,
Mm-hmm.
you know? And
Yeah.
again, I say that quietly because, you know,
Sure.
if this were a larger podcast, I would feel a responsibility to choose my words even more careful than I'm doing right now, or more carefully than I'm doing right now. But then we need to rally behind whoever it is that's replacing him.
Right.
Because I don't see this election as, and I know I'm not alone here, I don't see this election as Democrat versus Republican winning. Like, who's going to win? Like, I see this as somebody who is I firmly believe that the other nominee, the Republican nominee, Trump, is in this to win a contest, win a race for his ego, and also to not face the consequences of his already illegal actions. Like, we have to remember he is a convicted felon.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I said that in the 2016 election, one person was in it to win a contest, and one person was in it to lead a country. I don't know how much of that I believe, because I think a lot of politicians are in it for the wrong reasons, to be honest. I think a lot of them are in it for
So let me
power.
touch on a couple things that you said there. So the first thing is division among the Democratic Party. And actually, I think the second thing that I want to touch on ties into that. Timing. We're recording this on July 20th. If he's going to drop out, he has to drop out now, because there's getting close to around 100 days until the election. So they need to figure out, if he's going to drop out, he has to drop out now. They need to figure out who their nominee is, and then they have to rally behind it. If he doesn't drop out, I agree that people need to rally behind him.
And we're
My-
not just voting. I'm not the first person to say this, but we're not just voting for the president. In casting a vote for the president.
You're saying that you're also voting for the cabinet, and if the Supreme
Yes.
Court justice
Yes.
leaves and
Yes.
they get a nomination. Yeah.
Yes.
I agree. There's-
And if he's nominated, he can, or if he wins the election, he can also step down.
he could step down.
And his vice president, who Kamala Harris, could then.
Which is really tricky, though, because, I mean, I know when you vote for president, you're voting for the ticket.
Hmm.
But I think a lot of people view it as when you're voting for the top of the ticket, which is the president.
course.
So it's tricky for voters because if you say, okay, we vote for him, and then he steps down, it's almost the same as saying that you're voting, like, if Kamala was the top of the ticket. Which is, I just think it's tricky. Like, I think there's more debate about that, too. Like, just the mental gymnastics you have to do when you're voting for that. But anyway,
Mhm.
what I also wanted to say is that it's the Democratic Party needs to coalesce behind one person.
Yes.
Now, like next week.
Mm-hmm.
And there's all signs indicate at this point that people are really pressuring Biden to make the decision to drop out.
Yes.
I also want to just bring in, because I'm a data person, the polling right now.
Mhm.
In the United States, we have the stupid electoral college, which
Yes,
is, I think,
dumb.
so freaking dumb. And so I think this election is going to be decided, I think, because based on polling right now and what I've just read, just expert analysis and some statistical forecasting that people have done, it's going to be decided by 3 states: Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania. And right now, Biden's not doing great in those states. And so he has one forecast that I see. It's Nate Silver's forecast on the Silver Bulletin newsletter. He used to work at 538 and founded 538, but he left 538. He has Biden at a less than or around 30% chance of winning the entire election, based on polling. So he's not doing well as it is. He was down in the polls before the debate, and then he's sucked in terms of like trying to show his mental acuity after the debate and his competency. I think he's competent to do the job. I think he's been a very good president. I don't agree with everything that he's done. I think he's competent. I think he's a very good governor. Like, he can govern. But he's not winning right now. If the election were held today, he would lose potentially by a landslide. So I think that's another piece we have to look at.
So
right? Is there anything he can do to change those voters,
Right.
change those numbers? And if not, that's another push to maybe have him drop out.
So to respond to that, I've had a couple conversations with my friend who also follows this and is a lawyer. I'm not going to say who it is just because I don't want to like speak for this person. But you can probably figure out who it is yourself. And I don't follow the polls, but he has expressed to me that he does not and you know, just listening to him talk, like, I also kind of subscribe to this. He doesn't necessarily trust the polls just because they've gotten it wrong the past couple of years. I think with mail-in, I think that's another thing that, like, I don't see Trump winning. I hope I'm not being naive. I hope I'm not being, you know, radically optimistic, because I thought that Hillary was going to win in 2016. And
we're
saw how
switching
that
places.
happened.
Usually I'm the radically optimistic person.
Right. But I want to believe there are enough Republicans, because I am not one of those people that's like, Democrats are good and Republicans are bad. I am not one of those people. And I think it's much more complicated on both sides.
This election is going to be decided by Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, and Michigan. Assuming that other states that have been historically red and historically blue are going to stay that way. And some of the other swing states like Georgia, North Carolina, Arizona, and Nevada, which are all polling red right now, stay polling red.
And
Now,
that's also assuming that Biden stays in.
it is
Like,
also
there are
assuming that Biden
so
stays
many
in.
moving factors here.
Well, you can't, I mean, there's one thing, I think it's one thing to poll hypothetical, there's one thing to poll the actual presumptive nominee. Like Biden is the presumptive nominee right now.
Mhm.
Trump is definitely the nominee because that happened
Mhm.
last week at the convention, but Biden is the presumptive nominee. And so there have been polling companies that have polled, okay, how would Harris do against Trump? How would Newsom do against Trump? Whitmer, Buttigieg. But I think voters don't really seriously think about that until they're the candidate. So it's hypothetical versus what's the reality. And
Mhm.
right now, on polls where it's Biden Trump, in those states that I just mentioned, which are also swing states, like Arizona, Nevada, Georgia, North Carolina, Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin, all went blue in 2020. Every one of those states, except for Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, and Michigan, are pretty strongly leaning red right now in polls. Again, the point that I want to make of that is it's early. We still have 4 months out from the election, and polls historically have changed and are inaccurate at this point in July. They can be inaccurate, but they do represent a point in time that they were taken, depending on, some pollsters are more reputable than others. But I do think they're important to at least pay attention to see what is the current situation in the country. Again, it's impossible to poll accurately, but there's margins of error. But I think they're close enough to be like, okay, we have to pay attention to this. And that's just my take.
And fair. I remembered what I was going to say. Basically, I was just going to say, I want to hope that there are enough people on the Republican side that, because Trump, I'm sorry, is not a typical Republican, in my opinion. I don't think he has any respect for the democratic process, like democracy, at all. And I would hope that there are enough people that typically vote red that don't want to see that in power, that chaos.
It's a good hope.
Right.
I think I'm probably biased because I watched a lot of RNC coverage this past week, and in 2016 there were never Trumpers there, including JD Vance, although he wasn't at the convention, but he was
right. We can talk about him too, because he was very.
He was a never Trumper.
Yeah.
I don't think there was not a single never Trumper at the convention 8 years later. So I think the Republican Party, the Cheneys, the Romneys, even the Bushes that used to be of like the Republican Party of old, I think that republicanism and that style of conservatism is gone. And I think it's Trump's party. Not saying all. I think people in power who are running.
Big generalization.
For the most part.
Yes, I agree with you there.
But
people
I don't think all people who identify as Republicans are that. But I'm saying that the people who have been elected, and the 2022 midterms showed that a lot of people that Trump endorsed didn't win their primaries and didn't get their spots because people didn't want that style of republicanism or that style of governance. But for at least the top of the ticket, I do think that the Republican Party is moving more and more MAGA versus
I agree.
The typical conservatism that it has been historically.
I agree with that 100%. But I still think there are, like you just said, I think the key distinction there was not necessarily the voters, but the people running.
It's voters have a choice of, if you vote for the Republican nominee, you get a MAGA president. Do you want that style of conservatism or not? And also too, there's split tickets. You can vote for one party for president and vote for another party for, if like for instance in Massachusetts, Elizabeth Warren's Senate seat is up. So if you don't want Warren, but you want Biden, you can vote Biden and you can vote whoever Warren's, I don't know, her opponent is. So there's also that distinction too. So anyway, I think we should move on from this conversation, but I think it's a big headline. Is Biden going to stay in? Is he not going to stay in? And if he doesn't stay in, who's going to replace him? Personally, I think it's going to be Harris, because it makes the most sense that the vice president would then
Right.
be the ticket. I don't think the party is going to move over her. I think it would look bad. I mean, I think in terms of identity politics, if you move past the first woman vice president, the first black woman vice president, the first Asian woman vice president, in terms of identity politics, it doesn't look great.
I agree.
I think an open convention would be great. Basically have candidates who want the position or looking for the position kind of debate at the convention and maybe figure out what would be best. But I think logistically, and I honestly think this is what the White House is debating on right now, I think Biden's going to drop out.
I think so too.